Hello everyone, it's the Mountie, and today I'm going to do an updated list of my least favorite episodes of the first 3 seasons of Spongebob. Why only the first 3 seasons? Because in all honesty, doing a list about bad modern Spongebob episodes have been done to death, and I wanted to do something different. Does that mean that I like the later seasons of the show? No. In fact, I stopped watching the show over a year ago when I realized how screwed up it has become. For this list, however, I've gone back and watched the first 3 seasons again, and my opinions have either completely changed, stayed the same, or have gotten worse with time. Now, keep in mind that this is strictly my opinion, and I do realize that not everyone will agree with what I have to say about these 10 stinkers. So if you have a list of your least favorite episodes of SpongeBob, you can either leave a comment or make your own list. With that said, let's rock it! To start this list off, let's talk about censorship on television. While I understand the need to censor things on television, sometimes the things they censor, like Japanese text or badass lines from movies, are a little head-scratching. With cases like this, TV censorship pretty much makes itself a target for shows to make fun of. For example, I liked Family Guy's episode where they made fun of the FCC, and I liked other episodes that make jokes about TV censorship. But what happens when a joke gets very repetitive in an episode supposedly making fun of censorship on TV? You get the number 10 entry, Sailor Mouth. While this episode does have an interesting idea for a joke that sounds like a censor bleep, this episode suffers when it gets used over and over again, and it stops being funny before the halfway point of the episode, which is about 5.5 minutes. That is sad. One of the rules of comedy is to never overuse a joke, and this episode breaks that rule within the first 5 minutes, and considering that SpongeBob is a comedy, an overused joke like this can hurt the episode. But despite that issue, it does have some genuinely funny moments, like Mr. Krabs hitting his phone on a rock, and the beginning scene with the censor bleep, even though it gets overused later on. Also, fun fact, this episode got hate from the Parents Television Council because they felt it encouraged children to use profanity. Yeah, because when I hear kids about to swear, they make a dolphin noise instead of swearing. No wonder this organization's a laughingstock. One of the biggest issues I have with SpongeBob is their special episodes. Maybe it's because those episodes have a 22-minute or longer time slot to fill instead of 2 11-minute segments combined into one episode, but I'm just not a fan of them. I don't like their plots, the comedy is sometimes drier than the Sahara, and I feel like it drags on sometimes. One of these examples is the number 9 entry, Christmas Who. A character bringing a new holiday like Christmas to a town that never celebrated it before and having it fail miserably sounded like a good idea on paper, and I thought the second half where the Christmas-hating Squidward became Santa to help out SpongeBob and then the other citizens was okay at best, but the execution wasn't handled well. It painted the citizens as jerks when their plan to see Santa came crashing down. I felt the bit where they were setting up for Christmas and sending their letters to Santa went on for a little too long, and I'm not a fan of the musical number in it. Maybe it's because I'm older, but I just didn't like the song. Oh, and like the last entry, I wasn't a fan of the jokes in this one. I felt they were kinda dry. But although I didn't like this special, it's at least better than the special you'll see later on this list. Although it's been a couple years since I made this list, I still don't like the third season all that much. While not as terrible as the later seasons, I just thought the premises and jokes for these episodes weren't up to snuff compared to the first 2 seasons. One example of this is the episode I Had an Accident. So, what's the premise? SpongeBob breaks his ass while sandboarding and isolates himself from the outside world. Well, that's dark. But a dark premise can work if it's executed well. But sadly, I don't find this to be the case, as the bits where SpongeBob is in his house either drag on for too long, aren't funny, or has a lot of stupid moments like him filter feeding. Not helped by how unlikable SpongeBob is to his friends. I get it, you'll want to hide yourself from the outside world, but do not be a douche to your friends who think that you're overreacting. And yes, he does overreact a lot after this accident happens. If it was supposed to be a joke, I honestly didn't find them that funny. It just got really annoying after a while. Oh, and that ending bit was just so freaking stupid. Hey look, another episode from Season 3. One of my big issues with Rockabye Bivalve is its premise. Look, it's not the fact that a male and a male are taking care of a kid, because that is a whole other can of worms, and I don't even think the creators wanted to go that route. I could see that they were trying to make fun of the stereotypical family you'd see on a sitcom, but my issue with this is that they don't do anything unique about it aside from placing the man and the woman with a man and a man, and even then, SpongeBob gets characterized as the wife pretty quickly, so that change is really irrelevant. They argue they have issue raising the kid, one's a workaholic, etc. It's been done before. It doesn't even feel like a parody or doing the stereotype from a different perspective that much. Instead, it feels more like an episode of a stereotypical sitcom if you just replace the characters with Spongebob characters that barely have their personalities in those roles. Now, even if I didn't mind the premise, another issue I take with this episode is that it is so boring. I didn't laugh once throughout this episode, and it dragged on for so long, and keep in mind this is 11 minutes, I was asking myself when it was going to end. When an episode like this makes me ask that question, it pretty much deserves to be on this list. One idea that the modern SpongeBob episodes seem to rehash is to have Squidward get punished for no reason, and have the guys that were annoying him either get rewarded, or have nothing as bad happen to them. This idea has been nicknamed by the SpongeBob community as a Squidward torture porn. Some of you may be calling me a cheater since I said I was only doing the first 3 seasons, but what if I told you that what I described happened in Season 3? Well, you got the number 6 entry, Club SpongeBob. Now, before I begin, let me make something clear. This episode isn't as bad as the Squidward torture porn seen in the modern SpongeBob era, and some could argue that Squidward deserved to be punished here, though I disagree on that point. But my main issue with this episode is that all the core elements of a Squidward torture porn could be found here, to an extent. Squidward getting punished for no reason? Check. Characters who annoy him get rewarded? Check. Squidward getting in pain for trying to act intelligent? Check. An ending that treats Squidward like an idiot? Check, check, check. Seriously, I would not be that surprised if the writers from Modern SpongeBob watched this episode religiously, because the elements we see in Squidward torture porn episodes from the modern SpongeBob era are similar to the elements in this episode. That's really all I need to say about this. There's another reason why I don't like Season 3. You remember how my main issue with Sailor Mouth was when they overused their main joke? Well, combine that issue with a lot of cringe, and you get the episode Rip Pants. Good lord, this episode. The main joke that they run into the ground quicker than Sailor Mouth was SpongeBob ripping his pants. As I said before, SpongeBob is meant to be a comedy, and when shit like this happens, it can hurt the episode. Another issue I have with this episode are the cringeworthy moments in between the Rip Pants joke. Moments like SpongeBob failing to lift weights or trying to drown for attention are not funny to me. They just make me cringe. Or with the case of SpongeBob trying to drown to get a large audience, it makes my blood boil. And while the song near the end was good, it does not make up for the bad moments that took up a large amount of the episode. This next entry is a little hard to describe. I'm not that great with comedy. In fact, most of my jokes are usually at someone else's expense, or jokes I make in editing. So how do I talk about an episode I don't like that deals with jokes? I don't know, but I'm going to do it anyway. Squirrel jokes. Where do I begin with this one? First off, the jokes that make up a large majority of this episode aren't that funny to me. The way the citizens of the town are portrayed in this episode is just idiotic, as they treat Sandy like a fool because SpongeBob made squirrel jokes. The way that Sandy handles these jokes near the end is completely idiotic, considering she's usually the most mature out of the main cast, and the ending of the episode is kinda odd. So, when SpongeBob makes a joke at Sandy's expense, she gets pissed. When SpongeBob makes a joke at everyone else's expense, she doesn't care and laughs along? Double standards at its finest. What do you get when you combine Patrick acting stupid and terrible pacing? You get I'm with stupid. Although this episode starts off with an interesting premise, it falls apart when Patrick's parents enter the fray and SpongeBob acts like an idiot so that Patrick is viewed out with a better light from his parents. Not too long after SpongeBob acts like an idiot, Patrick acts like a douche to his friend with barely any setup to it. I can understand Patrick's parents acting like a douche to SpongeBob, but Patrick is his best friend. He shouldn't be doing this, and if they wanted to portray him as a douche, the setup to that plot point was so rushed you could probably get whiplash from it. I mean, hell, SpongeBob was still willing to help Patrick, so the least Patrick could do is treat him with respect, but that doesn't happen. Instead, he acts about as brain dead as his parents, and it gets very annoying as the episode goes on. And not even the jokes can make me like this episode, since they went from decent in the beginning to unbearable by the time Patrick's parents enter the scene. Oh, and that twist about Patrick's parents being fake can go die in a ditch for all I care. The final 2 entries on this list are from Season 3. Getting the Silver Stone of Shit is the episode As Seen on TV. Having a premise about the Krusty Krab getting a commercial can make for an interesting one. Hell, they could have probably made a whole episode about getting ready for the commercial and the dangers of it. Kinda like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody's episode, Commercial Break. But instead, the episode has the commercial part for only a couple of minutes, and the rest of it pretty much focuses on SpongeBob acting like an unlikable big shot to his friends and the people around him. This got very irritating, very fast, and it wasn't even that funny. Look, I don't have an issue with the guy learning a lesson about fame and popularity since the early seasons did have some sort of moral to it in a few of their episodes. But he doesn't even learn anything from this. The end of the episode still has him as a jackass, but he flips patties now. Yeah, I know SpongeBob doesn't really follow a lot of continuity, but still. This episode is a wreck, and is hands down my least favorite normal episode of the first 3 seasons. That's right, I said normal episode. What's my number 1 then? Well, number 1 is The Sponge Who Could Fly. This special is atrocious. The comedy was weak, the patchy segments weren't that great to watch, the characters are unlikable, and the plot is one of the worst I've ever seen on this show. Until Modern SpongeBob, that is. Of all the things they could do for a special episode, they decided to give SpongeBob a dream to fly with a jellyfish. Because him trying to be one with a jellyfish worked out so well with Nature Pants. Ignoring that, the methods of him trying to do so come off as more painful to watch than interesting. Not helped by how the townsfolk are portrayed in this episode. When SpongeBob attempts to fly with a jellyfish, they attack him. And yet, when he gets the ability to fly, they treat him like a messiah? That is stupid! And even SpongeBob, the guy we're supposed to be rooting for in this episode, is unlikable, as he comes off as more naive and stupid than in previous episodes, and his attitude towards the townsfolk doesn't make him any better than them. Not even the jokes and music can save this episode in my opinion. They are either bland, unfunny, or just overall bad. And I think that's probably the best way to describe this episode to me. It is bad. Hands down deserving the number 1 spot on this list. I'm the Mountie, and this concludes my top 10 least favorite episodes of SpongeBob seasons 1 through 3. Take care, everyone.